Welcome back to Cloud 42. I'm James. Well, if you can't tell, I'm not in the shop today. This is my wife Renee, and we are taking some time off. We're up in Colorado in the mountains, enjoying the nice late summer weather. Came up to Estes Park, Colorado. Going to catch the Shaw Classic Strongman show while we're here. And in honor of the channel just hitting 50,000 subscribers, we're going to do a little Q&A today. I've got my wife Renee here to ask me the questions, and we'll just kind of go through the things that are on your mind and see if we can give you some answers.
Who had the most influence on you as a machinist or engineer, problem-solving perspective, and why?
I think that's a hard question. In terms of my problem-solving perspective and how I go about thinking about things, I honestly just think that's innate. It's just the way my brain works. It doesn't work any other way. I couldn't approach it any other way. I think the person who I would point to as a mentor that really influenced me the most is a man by the name of Patrick McShane. He's passed now, but when I was in junior high, he came over. I hired him to fix my Commodore 64 computer that had a bad power supply, it turned out. And he was running a little supplemental school, an after-school education program. I got involved with that, and he gave me resources and opportunities to explore electronics and computers and things that interested me, and he just provided encouragement and resources and just sort of an open playground for me, and that allowed me to explore things that I enjoyed, and it's what set me on the path to where I am today.
Which tool post do you recommend? Multi-fix, wedge type, or other? How rigid is the wedge type that you use? Great content. Thank you, and congratulations for 50 subs. Oh,
thank you. The tool post that I have on my lathe right now is just an Aloris wedge type. I think it's an AX0. And it's a good little tool post. I think it's plenty rigid for what I do. It's plenty rigid for a 10 by 22 lathe. In fact, I've used one also on a hard hinge HLVH, and I think it was totally fine for that as well. Now, all of that said, I have been lusting after a multi-fix. I really like the idea of being able to just pop the tool holder off and rotate it to another angle and bring it back square without having to square it up on anything. So I'd like to have one, but really the wedge type works just fine.
How often do you use your tool holder mounted grinding wheel? Are there any projects you'd like to get to which you haven't been able to due to time? What about due to lack of equipment?
Yeah, I've got an endless supply of projects that I'd like to get to. When I built the tool post grinder originally, it was for a particular job that I had in mind, and then some plans changed and that went on the back burner. So it's sitting in a drawer. It's there if I ever need it, but yeah, I haven't used it much.
What is your primary motivator for your machining and your channel?
I think for me, I do software for a living. It's my day job, and I've been doing that for a long time. And when you're working with software, you'll find that there's a couple things about it. One is it's not tangible. You can't touch it. And the other is that it's never done. No matter what you do, there will always be another version. There will always be another bug fix. There will always be another security vulnerability that needs fixed. And so it's very satisfying to have a hobby where I can do something else, where something can be done. It's tangible. I can touch it. I can get a good surface finish. I can make something shiny, and I can sit there and look at it and say, I made that. And I really appreciate that. And that's something that with software, you can have pride in your work, but you can just never touch it. It's never tangible. And I think that's why I enjoy machining.
What is your plan for the GO704 mill in the future? Any more modifications like Y-axis spacer or linear rails? How do you like the new BT30 spindle? Is there anything you regret doing or not doing on the GO704?
You know, I don't really regret anything. That's been a great project. I really enjoyed doing the CNC conversion, and I've really enjoyed having the machine. That said, it definitely has limitations, and the biggest limitation is really the Y-axis travel. The machine's theoretically got 7 inches, but by the time you get the double nut ball screws in there, it's limited to maybe 5 that are practical. I'd like to do the Y-axis conversion, but obviously I want a lot more. I really would love to have 12 inches or more. I'm thinking about maybe getting a really rigid gantry router set up for milling aluminum, but we'll see. I'm not sure where I'm going to go with that.
Is there any new tool you want to have for your workshop in the future? Keep up the good work. Greetings from Germany.
Yeah, I've been wanting to get a surface grinder. It's something that has been on my wish list for a long time. I actually bought one and it arrived damaged and ended up being a 6-month process to get an insurance claim on that. But I would like to have a surface grinder. I'd like to have a CNC machine with a larger Y-axis travel. And those are things you'll probably see at some point in the future.
How much time do you spend on video setups and on editing? What software do you use for video? Have you tried other CAD software?
I got a bunch of questions in there. In terms of video, I really try to make my time in the shop as efficient as possible. So I do a lot of pre-planning, and that cuts something that would probably be, an 8-hour edit down to maybe 3. So I'll spend an hour or 2 planning. I'll spend, for any individual video, unless it's a big long-term project, I'll spend 2 to 3 hours shooting, and then best case maybe 3 hours editing and putting it together for YouTube. Worst case, things drag out. I've spent 8, 10, 12 hours editing a video before. I do everything with the Adobe Creative Suite, so I'm using Premiere Pro for most of my editing and most of the other Adobe software there. Was there another part to that question? Oh, have you used any other CAD software? Yeah, definitely. I'm using Fusion 360 mostly now. I actually started out with SolidWorks, and I love SolidWorks, but it's pretty pricey.
After all these practical projects you showed, will you be doing some episodes about something more hobby-like, i.e. building a scale steam or ice engine?
That's always a possibility. That kind of stuff does interest me. It's just not something I've ever gotten around to. Honestly, the tool making interests me a lot, and I don't really plan out my shop time around what kind of videos I want to make. I just spend time in the shop doing the things that I enjoy, and right now that's tool making, so you're seeing a lot of tool making. If at some point the steam engine comes to the top of my list of things that I'm interested in, well, that's what you'll see.
Congrats on 50K. I'm wondering how well do you like that 5-seat collet chuck you bought off eBay, and would you buy it again? I've been on the fence about that same chuck. Is it very useful so far?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually prefer a 5-seat collet chuck for anything that will actually fit in a collet chuck. I much prefer it to a normal, like a 3-jaw chuck or even a 4-jaw. Now, obviously, there's a lot of things that won't fit in it, but anything that will fit in it goes in the collet chuck for me. And part of that's because I first learned to machine on a hard-inch HLVH, and that's has a collet closer on it. I'd love to have a lever collet closer, and yeah, I would use it for everything. And that little inexpensive chuck has worked really well for me. And even if you get a bad grip or a cheap collet and you're out by a thou, it's still way more accurate than my 3-jaw. So yeah, I use it for everything that'll fit in it.
Will you be making any projects that don't involve making machine tools for machine tools?
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit. I like making tools, so yeah, there's going to be a lot of tools probably in the future. But if something comes up that looks interesting, like I said, I just pursue what interests me.
Would you consider being a full-time YouTuber?
I consider it. It's certainly not a goal that I have. I enjoy my day job. I'm pretty good at it, and it pays well. So it's a good combination to have this as a hobby. I think if the YouTube thing became a full-time job for me, it would make it stressful. It would make it, well, more stressful than it is, but I think it would make it so that it wasn't fun anymore. And I really am not pushing hard, but if this thing grew a life of its own and took off and got to a point where I could live on it, I'd certainly consider it, but it's not a primary goal that I have.
What made you switch to Team Red?
Yeah, so I mentioned in a previous video that I joined Team Red, meaning I bought into the Milwaukee M18 and M12 power tool battery ecosystem. And I had some cash from winning the 4-jaw challenge at the Barzy Summer Bash this year, and I decided I wanted to upgrade from my old 20-year-old Ryobi drill. And I looked around and I looked at a lot of reviews. There's a lot of stuff that Project Farm has put out. ABE's torn down a bunch of these tools. The Torque Test channel's done a bunch of looking at impact wrenches. And there's not any one tool that made me want to do that, but just in general, the breadth and depth of the ecosystem, and generally as a quality, as far as I could tell, which of course is, limited. You have to just sort of pay your money and take your chances. It looked to me like that was the most solid ecosystem that was out there. And if I was going to buy into one new battery ecosystem, it looked like a good bet. So I jumped, and we'll see. I don't tend to use up my tools. I don't tend to beat them up or put a lot of wear on them. So honestly, almost anything would probably work. I use that little Ryobi drill that originally came with NiCad batteries for 20 years after all, but I think they'll be good for me, for my use.
Do you think it's worth it for a home hobby shop such as yours to have a surface grinder, or are they just going to take up too much space and not get used all too often?
I think that depends on what you mean by is it worth it? Is it worth it to you? I want one because I've got a few projects that I'd really like to be able to grind nice and flat and parallel and pretty. Do I need one? Is it worth it? If by worth it, do you mean will it pay for itself? Will it pay back the investment? Will I generate revenue off of it to pay for it? No, probably not. Do I want one? Yes. Yes, I do.
Is the G0704 still a good mill to do a CNC conversion on, or are there better options now? Did you use a kit, or did you source everything yourself?
Yeah, so when I did that conversion, I used the Haas machine. I bought the Haas machine DVD and then made or bought all of the parts individually. So yeah, I sourced it all myself, and I machined the brackets. I know there are kits out there. As for whether the G0704 is a good starting point today, I honestly don't know. I have heard rumors that the quality of pretty much all import machine tools has gone downhill over the last few years. When I bought it, it was a solid machine. It's been good for me. I don't know if it's a good starting point today. You'd really kind of have to look around. I haven't been shopping for one recently.
How do you balance work, video making, working out, eating healthy, etc.? It seems like you are a very driven individual who makes the best of every minute. Any tips or tricks for time management?
I got no tips or tricks for you for time management. As to how I balance it, the answer is probably poorly. Again, this is the way my brain works. My brain never stops. I'm always doing something. I'm always thinking about something, and the projects I do in the shop are just kind of, I'm going where my interests lead me. And so in terms of how do you balance it, it's about priorities. The working out and my health and lifting, it is a real priority for me. I'm not getting any younger, and as I age, the less body fat I'm carrying and the more muscle mass I have, the better off I'm going to be, and the longer I'm going to live and be independent without requiring somebody to help me get off the toilet. So that's a priority for me. I put that first, and then everything else falls in where I have time and where I have interest.
Do you ever feel pressured to produce content? You obviously have some projects which are lengthy and take many episodes to cover, but do you sometimes have the thought, what am I going to put out there next?
Sometimes I think it's all self-imposed though. There's a lot of theories about what it takes to make a YouTube channel successful, and honestly, I'm not trying to live off the income here or anything, so it's all self-imposed if I put pressure on myself to do that. I don't generally make a lot of filler content. If I want to take a week off, I take a week off. But I've also always got this long backlog of, relatively simple videos that I've been thinking about that I can bang out if I have a few minutes, and you're watching one of them right now.
What is your educational and professional background?
I have a bachelor's degree in computer science, and I've been working for 26 years in the software industry. The machining stuff is a hobby.
How in the world do you keep your shop so clean?
I have a couple of answers to that. I mean, I clean it. Every time I make a mess, I clean it up, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One is it's a small shop, and I just absolutely would not be able to function if it were not clean. Some of it's psychological. When I get mired in something and when I get to the point where I just can't think straight or I'm stuck on a problem, if I clean, it makes me feel better emotionally being in a clean shop, but it also gives me something to do with my hands while my brain continues to work on the problems. And so I find that really useful. And also, when I first started the channel, I picked a really clean white kind of aesthetic for the videos, and that necessitates a lot of cleaning, and I don't regret it at all. I really do enjoy having a clean shop with lots of light, and it makes me happy, and so it's worth it to me.
Do you see yourself machining as a full-time job at your home shop?
Probably not. I don't see that happening. So I've got the electronic lead screw project, and I've done all the manufacturing on that. If I wanted to scale up and develop further products, I think I would really be designing those to be manufactured by a third party. I don't want to be doing production jobs or production manufacturing to try to earn a living. I'm much more interested in the design and creative research and development side of things.
Would you consider dabbling in injection molding in the near future?
Injection molding sounds like a lot of fun. It also sounds pretty expensive. So I've got the 3D printing thing going, and I can produce most of what I need. I've had lots of situations where I would really love to have an injection molded part or a capability to generate injection molded parts at volume. It's a big investment because I'm going to have to get a much more serious kind of CNC mill to make the sort of molds that I would want for the kind of parts that I would be likely to want to make. So yeah, that's probably not going to happen in the near future, but it's something that interests me.
Are you married with Blondie Hacks?
As much as the internet seems to want that, nope. Quinn's a good friend. I love her channel. Renee and I watch her stuff every time she puts out a video, but nope, we're not married.
How are you?
How am I? You know, honestly, it's not something that I think about a lot. I don't tend to think a lot about how I'm feeling. My brain is more wired around the stuff that I'm interested in and the stuff that I want to do, and so I'll just push myself until I'm out of energy. But honestly, I'm good. I feel good. I feel healthy. My day job is something that I still enjoy, and it pays the bills, and I've got my shop and I can spend time relaxing, and Renee and I are great, so we're good.
Yes, we are. That's the end.
That's the end of the questions. Let's pop over to Instagram.
What made you pick the Lawnmower Crossfire? I'm interested to hear your reasons, as I just ordered one as well.
Yeah, I just posted a video about, not a video, but on Instagram I posted a picture of some little 3D printed spacers that I made for my Langmuir Crossfire plasma table. Why did I pick that one? You know, I wanted a plasma table. I've got a project coming up that I would like to plasma cut a couple of parts for, and decided that I had room in the budget for it. So I went ahead and ordered it. Why did I pick that one? Honestly, I looked around at kind of what was out there. There's some industrial stuff for a lot more dollars. You could go really DIY on the low end for cheaper. But the Langmuir system looked like something that was going to be sufficient. It was going to be relatively solid. I mean, it's only supported on the one side, so rigidity might be a concern, but there's no back pressure with a torch. And I got the torch height control, so I figured it was a safe bet, and it was also a pretty simple mechanism that I figured I could upgrade or modify or, you know, make it better if it ended up not being good enough.
Congratulations, great content.
Thanks.
How do you feel about cats?
How do I feel about cats? I have owned cats. If this is a cats versus dogs question, I prefer cats because they are self-sufficient. They generally ignore you. If they need anything, they come and get attention for like 2 minutes, and then they go back off doing their own thing, crouching down in the tall carpet, waiting to ambush you. So yeah, I prefer cats, but I don't have any animals right now. We have come to a point in our lives where, you know, if we don't want to go around picking up feces, we don't have to. So that's where we are. Renee's actually allergic to cats, though, so we wouldn't have one anyway.
I love watching yours and Blondie's channels. They seem to be the only people who still show decent content. What's your favorite thing to work with? Manual mill, lathe, CNC, 3D printer, welding?
My favorite tool to work with. You know, it comes as a disappointment to a lot of people, but honestly, the 3D printers. And the reason for that is because They're very relaxing. They're low stress for me. When I get on the lathe and I've got hours and hours and hours into a part, and then I get chatter or I break a tool or something goes wrong, or on the mill, if I am trying to run the CNC mill, and especially with the high-speed spindle, it moves fast, and it's a real kind of a clench and hold your hand over the e-stop switch when it goes. So you can do some beautiful stuff, but I find it kind of stressful. And with the 3D print, I can design something and then I can just let the printer go and do its thing. And if there's any kind of a problem, it's not going to break anything. It's just going to make a plate of spaghetti, and I can just change my design, change some parameters, and hit go again. And so I've become very confident in my ability with that machine. And so it's the one that I enjoy using the most. And if it's appropriate, it's a very simple, direct approach to making something. That said, I like running the big machines. I like making lots of chips, and I love a nice shiny aluminum surface off of the CNC. So I enjoy it all, but the 3D printer is my go-to tool if it's appropriate for the job.
Congratulations. What background do you have in metalworking?
Yeah, my metalworking background, again, it's just a hobby. And when I started in the software industry, the company that I was working for had a model shop that was for producing prototypes for products, and they had that available for employees to use. You just had to take an 8-hour training class. So I went in and took the class and ran through a couple of projects on the mill, on the lathe, and some sheet metal tools. And that was sort of my introduction to both how to operate the machines and to shop safety. And I loved it, and I've been doing it ever since.
Do you feel your machining is leading in more of a toolmaker path? Love the CNC videos, but I'm also digging the bigger, more capable machine tools you're getting.
Yeah, the tools are what interest me. Tools are something that you can handle, something you can use. Now, if I make a little steam engine, which I might do someday, that interests me, it's going to sit on a shelf. It's a display item, and my house is already full of stuff that I don't need. And so making a tool that's useful, that I can utilize, I'm drawn to that more than I am to making toys. But honestly, the tools are toys too.
Can you explain your exercise plan and technique for lifting and getting into phenomenal shape?
Well, I'll take that as a compliment. Thank you. If you look back at the early days of my YouTube channel, I was significantly overweight, and I looked terrible and I felt terrible, but I didn't really realize how bad I felt until I didn't feel that way anymore. And I just made a decision that I wanted to make a change in my life, and the first thing I wanted to do was just lose a bunch of weight. And to do that, I was spending 45 minutes a day, 5 days a week on an elliptical machine, and just kind of limiting my calories. I was eating about 1,500 to 1,700 calories a day and getting a ton of cardio. And that's how I dropped all of that weight. And I dropped about 80 pounds. And then after that, you'll see that phase on my channel too, where I was just super skinny. And after that, I picked up barbell strength training. And I'm doing that now, and I've been doing that for a few years now, and it's really paid big dividends for me. And for anybody who's interested in getting started on that, most people start the same way I did. They'll do a little bit of Googling, and they'll come up with starting strength, and they'll start on the starting strength linear progression. And honestly, Mark Ripito with that program has probably done more for the amateur strength training community than any other man on the planet. That said, most people eventually just burn out on that program, and if the only answer is, well, you just didn't want it enough or you weren't tough enough, it's not very helpful. And so I would really point people instead to Barbell Medicine. Look them up on YouTube, on Instagram, check out their website. They've got a ton of useful information about health and fitness and strength training, and they have a bunch of programs. They have a free program called The Bridge, and they have something called the Beginner Prescription.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think those are an excellent place to start if you're interested in getting started with barbell training. As for what I'm doing, I am running a Barbell Medicine paid program at the moment, and it's 3 days a week, and it's a powerlifting program, so it's based on the squat, the bench, and the deadlift. So each of the 3 days, I've got a few sets of one of the main lifts, followed by some variations of some of the others. So I spend, if I'm really focused, 60 minutes. If I'm not as focused, 90 minutes or a couple of hours kind of going through my program 3 days a week. And then there's a couple of days of conditioning, and I do some running and some other stuff. And I'm not as religious about the conditioning as I am with the strength training, but yeah, she's laughing. But you know, that's what I do, and I have found that it has just fundamentally changed my life. Carrying around less body fat and more muscle mass just it changes the world, and it puts me in a much better situation in terms of long-term health outcomes. And I think it's something that everyone ought to do, but if you're interested in it, I think barbell medicine is a great resource to start with. That it?
That's it.
Okay, well, that's all the questions we've got. 50,000 subs is not a goal that I'd really set out to reach. I didn't really know if that was something that was possible, and I thank all of you for your support. It's really been great. And I don't know where this is going to go in the future, but I'm just going to keep working on the things that I love and sharing it with the world. And if there's interest, then I guess we'll keep growing. Thank you for watching.